home. I am coming to you today to talk all about our brand new product, Jolie Varnish. This is an amazing top coat that we've been working for, I hate to admit, but well over a year on, and it is perfection. This varnish is 100% clear acrylic, so there will be absolutely no yellowing on top of any of your Jolie paint colors, including our whites. It is also a great option for projects that you want to have a higher sheen level. Even our low luster is more of a satin sheen, and our gloss is a high gloss. Our Jolie finishing wax is intended to be a matte wax, although it can be buffed to a higher sheen. So the choice between finishing wax and varnish is really about preference and the style that you're going for, or if you really want to put a top coat on that can be white very frequently, which would be great for cabinetry or tabletops. It also, the Jolie Varnish has an option to be sprayed as well. So please keep that in mind if you don't want to brush on your top coat. Today I'm going to demonstrate on three different boards that are painted with Legacy, 2 coats of paint. I'm going to apply the Jolie finishing wax and kind of explain that application process, and then I'm going to move on to the low luster and then gloss in the Jolie Varnish. So the finishing wax, again, is intended to have a fairly matte finish when dried, although it can be buffed to have a higher sheen. The wax is best applied with a brush. We have 2 different wax brushes, our regular wax brush, which is a little bit larger than this, or what we call our pointed wax brush. This one has a bit more of an angle at the tip, and it's smaller in size. It is, it can be brushed on, and it doesn't really matter what direction you brush it in, although if you're doing a large surface, you might want to make sure that you're working with the grain to make sure that you're getting the wax in deep into the crevices. Think about wax more about absorbing into the paint, and when you wipe off the excess, it's going to dry and harden and really become one. Where the Jolie Varnish is going to appear as if it sits on top of the paint. And so you can notice the clear top coat in a way that you don't necessarily notice with the wax. So you just brush on the finishing wax. And if you happen to have any bristles come out of your brush, make sure to remove them before the top coat dries. And take a soft, lint-free cloth and wipe off the excess. You don't have to labor over this part. You don't even want to buff the finish at this point. If you want a high sheen, we encourage you to wait 2 hours, and then you can come back over your piece and buff it, and that will increase the sheen level. If you apply it and leave it, it will remain fairly matte. It does take at least 8 hours for the solvent, essentially, that's in the wax to start to cure and evaporate, and it will take up to 2 to 3 weeks to fully cure. I am very proud of this product in that it is non-hazardous. To my knowledge, it is the only, if not one of the very few finishing waxes on the market that is both solvent-based with hydrocarbon, but also non-hazardous. It is so high up in the chain that it is very clean and has no contact or respiratory irritants. It also has virtually no odor. What you're smelling from the product is the wax components. So just as simple as that, you brush it on, wipe off the excess, and set it over the side to dry. In most cases, if you're doing cabinetry, furniture that's going to be touched a lot, I do encourage people to use 2 to 3 coats of wax, but make sure that you have at least 8 hours of dry time in between. So I'm going to set this off to the side. we're gonna get into the varnish. Let's see, low luster we're gonna do first. So I have not mixed this, I've not shaken it or stirred it yet, and I'm hoping that when I open it, there will be a little bit of separation, because I wanna show you, if you see that, you know, don't fret. It needs to be shaken and stirred to be used properly. Oh, it looks fabulous. So the product itself has a number of proprietary ingredients in it, one of which is intended to reduce scratching of the surface. Occasionally you'll see it floating, almost look like an amber color, little chunks, you know, that might be floating in there. This product can be shaken. So if you see that, just apply, you know, put the lid back on, give it a light shake, and then you always want to stir. You want to stir your paint, you want to stir any kind of liquid top coats to make sure that the components are all working as they are intended for the entire can. So I'm just going to give it a light stir and then set my stir stick off to the side. Okay, so when using the Jolie Varnish, you always, always, always want to use a synthetic bristle brush. Our signature brushes, the Jolie signature brushes, use a combination of pure and synthetic bristles. Those are great for many things, not applying varnish. You want to use our Jolie wax brushes, our Jolie flat brushes. These brushes come in large and small. I'm going to be using the smalls today because I'm working on small sample boards. And you want to apply it as if you're applying a smooth finish for the paint. I will also tell you that varnish should be applied on projects that are using a smooth finish, generally in the application. Because it has higher sheen levels, you're going to see the highs and lows of, you know, any texture that may have on the surface. So I painted these boards using a relatively smooth finish where essentially I'm taking the paint and I'm applying it with the grain, and I'm allowing the brush to really sit in my hand as opposed to holding it like this and painting very vertically. I'm letting the brush relaxed, sitting in my hand, and I'm gonna glide the paint onto the surface. And if you use any kind of back and forth motions like this, you wanna make sure that your very last brush stroke that you apply to the surface, you're going from one end to the other in clean, straight, smooth lines. You also wanna use very little pressure. Pressure can create texture in whatever medium you're using, whether it's paint or varnish. So I'm going to dip my brush and I'm going to, you know, wipe the side to offload. You don't want it to be drippy. You don't want to put, you know, really thick coats of the varnish. You want to apply it again very smoothly, where you're going from one side all the way to the other in a nice, clean, smooth brush stroke. You also do not want to dilute the varnish. Even if you're putting it through a sprayer, it is not designed to be mixed with water. The varnish by itself has, you know, a very, I don't want to say very, but a pretty liquid consistency, and it should not need to be thinned at all. Okay, so you can see this is the low luster. I'm hoping that you can see that in the camera. Low luster varnish going on. And after we apply the gloss, I'm gonna cut and then come back to you once it's dried so that you can see the difference in the sheen level. So again, I'm just putting a little bit of varnish onto my brush, starting on one end and smoothing it out all the way to the other. So far, the people that have used Varnish, even if they were a big fan and lover of our wax, they have seriously enjoyed it and realized that for certain projects, again, whether they want a sheen, you know, a different sheen level, or easier wipeability, Jolie Varnish is now a great option for them. So just like that, I've applied one coat of the Jolie Varnish, and I'm gonna set it off to dry. You can see it's a very smooth finish. I don't have any globs or drips. If you do, be sure to smooth it out. Generally, you want to make sure that you clean up after yourself when using Jolie Varnish. Unlike the wax, it's gonna have a harder time, or it's not gonna reconstitute at all. So if you don't wash your brushes immediately after use, they will become rock hard, and unfortunately, you will ruin them. Okay, this is our third sample board, and we are going to use the gloss. So I'm gonna pretend that there was some separation here. We did not see that in the other one, but to shake and stir, you just want to lightly shake. You don't wanna, you know, the paint, I encourage everybody to shake it vigorously, to give it a good 60 seconds. If you can, flip it upside down and shake it before you stir it. With the varnish, you just want to give it a light shake as to not create any air bubbles. Now, one top coat product that I don't have out here is our floor varnish. Our floor varnish is intended for floors, and our Jolie Varnish is not intended for floors. So if you do have a floor project, you want to make sure to use that other top coat that we have. So this does actually have a little bit of separation. You probably can't see it on camera, but it seems like it's just little tiny, like almost like chunks of like a cream color material. And you just give it a stir and they reconstitute. Everything becomes one again. All right. Set that off to the side. Okay. Just like I applied the low luster, I'm going to use a synthetic bristle brush and apply it in a very, using very smooth brush strokes. Starting at the bottom, I'm gonna go from one end all the way to the other. The varnish almost appears to have like a blue iridescent undertone when you first apply it. That does go away when it dries and becomes completely clear. If you have any kind of ridges or crevices, you want to make sure that you don't have any pooling of the varnish in those spaces. And then once it is dried, you can use any kind of biodegradable cleaner that you want to clean the surfaces. In most cases, I encourage people to just use damp cloths when wiping surfaces that are topped with our Jolie finishing wax. I have to admit, I've had kitchen cabinets painted and I've used Clorox wipes on top of the finishing wax before without a problem. I am kind of germophobic, especially when it comes to raw meats, and so in the kitchen I like to make sure things are sanitary, and there was no problem. The biggest issue with wax is over time, when you continue to wipe and wipe and wipe, it'll actually wear the wax off of the surface and then needs to be reapplied. You do not need to do that with the varnish. Now, a positive of that is if you ever need to touch up or clean a surface that has been waxed, you can always apply a fresh coat of wax and it's like new again. If the varnish is ever compromised, either with a scratch or a stain, unfortunately, you can't just apply another coat of varnish and expect it to go away. You would need to sand it or repaint it and then apply a new coat. So I've just got the gloss on this piece, and I'm gonna set it off to dry, and then we'll come back to show you. It actually takes 2 to 3 coats, depending on how much time I have. I may or may not do that today, but I will definitely come back to show you what it looks like when it's dried. If you have any questions about our Jolie finishing wax or our varnish, please comment or send us an email. You can email us at info@joliehome.com, or you can comment and DM us or pick up any of our posts or threads at Jolie Paints across Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, any of those platforms. And we're here to help. Hey everybody, I'm back for the final reveal so I can show you the difference in the sheen levels of 3 different top coats that we've used: our Jolie finishing wax, our Jolie varnish in low luster, and our Jolie varnish in gloss. I'm hoping you can see it in the camera, and I'll probably put them next to each other so that we can compare. So this is the wax. This is 1 coat. Actually, I take that back. This is 2 coats of wax. Freshly applied. It has not had time to really cure, but by touch, it definitely feels matte, although because I used a smooth finish, I can already see, a little bit of sheen to it. This will settle down and be a bit more matte as it cures. Hopefully you can see that. All right, next up is our low luster. You can see that this is a satin sheen level. It definitely is reflecting more light than the wax was. And lastly, I'm going to put it next to each other so hopefully we can see the difference, our gloss. So you can see the gloss is reflecting the most light compared to the low luster in our wax. So I hope this helps. All of our top coats are equally fantastic. It's really a preference of what you want to create, the sheen level that you want to create on the surface, and the use. So can't go wrong. I hope you have a great day and make life beautiful.